This is take two now. But we're one taking this. Good thing I only got 3 minutes in before I had a coughing fit, so, you know, nothing lost. Anyways, we're running it back. Like I said, if you know me, follow me at Twitter. This is where I more consistently put out stuff. Um, I also put out such banger jokes as, boom, yeah, I'm a jokester. Some of my jokes are god awful though, so be ready for that. What am I talking about today? I want to talk about how do you actually improve at the game? Because like, I see a lot of people online that are like, I'm stuck in X Elo. We'll say, oh yeah, I'm working wonders with the cursor. Uh, okay, they're like, I'm stuck in gold. I'm hard stuck gold. And how do I actually get better at the game, right? And that's a pretty good question. So I'm gonna define how do you actually get better at the game, because this is something that a lot of people don't seem to understand. At the very concept of like, what does it mean to get better at Wild Rift, right? So we're gonna start with silver, gold, plat, emerald, and then diamond. Obviously, this graph is kind of shitty, but yeah, I mean, hey, I can't draw, so But the point here is you got to think of your improvement in Wild Rift not as a rank, but as a series of vectors, right? And so this is what's really important, right? Is that we'll say that this axis right here, your x-axis, is the micro axis, right? So this is all micro down here. I'm going to use I for micro because it's that. And then we'll say that this y-axis here is your macro axis, right? Or your macro scale. So it's like when you're thinking about improvement in the game, you don't improve by just making your micro better. Because if you're about here, right, in between platinum and emerald on micro, but you're stuck over here on macro, you're gonna be about here on the curve, right? You're not like if your macro is silver, but your micro is maybe emerald, your actual skill level is about gold, right? It's about where it is between these two axes on this line, our our line right here, right? Oh, baby, right? Allergies again. So when you, so right, well, how do I improve, right? Because why does this matter? Is the question then. What does this have to do with me improving at Wild Rift? Well, a lot of you are this, right? And you're like, why am I hard stuck? Mid plat, low emerald, right? And again, this could be any rank. This could be like GM to Challenger, right? And in which case the differences may be smaller and not as obvious, but they're still there. And it's like, what makes you know, my players stuck in Platinum Emerald is not that they have Emerald Micro, because they have Emerald Micro, they're very close. But it's the fact that their macro is really bad, right? And the same thing applies if your micro is really bad, right? If your micro is Platinum level, and let's say your macro is high Emerald, low Diamond, you're probably an Emerald. Again, these aren't necessarily specifics, but it's a generalized theory that I sort of want to improve on, like implement into people's minds, right? Because the reason is, why does this matter, right? And so this is gonna get into some geometry stuff, so stay with me for a little bit. But basically, if you were to make this triangle right here, right, you combine these three to make a triangle. This side right here is always longer than these two sides. And that's important because you can improve your macro to emerald and you can improve your micro to emerald, or vice versa, and maybe not even hit emerald. Because what it takes is it takes a meshing of both those things. You can't have emerald macro one game and then emerald micro the next while having, the plat as the opposite. You're not going to improve. You need to make sure that both things are there at the same time. And that's what that final step, right? This, if you were to imagine, there's like a barrier here. That's a dog water line. There's a barrier here, right? At our emerald point. And right here is where you put the skills together. And that's what a lot of people seem to miss. It's like, you can improve on macro, you can improve on micro. Those are really good. But to actually see a definitive increase, you need to put both of these things together, right? For the longest time, I was struggling in diamond. And the reason that I was struggling in diamond, right, was like I had my macro on point. I was up here. I'll put it over here just to make it a little bit clearer. And my micro was about here. It was fine. Like it was good enough to reach diamond, right? But the reason that I struggled back in the old seasons from getting emerald to diamond was that I didn't put them together, right? I couldn't break the diamond barrier. I'd go up, I'd go down, I'd go up, I'd go down. Because what would happen is one game I'd be playing with both of these combined. But the next game, I'd just fall asleep. It's like you gotta be able to combine both. And again, this isn't some sort of I'm not trying to what's the right word? I'm not trying to prove anything here. This isn't some sort of like complicated theory and like the scenario isn't that important. It's just you've got to think about the game as instead of, hey, how do I improve, right? When I see my rank go up, it's your rank going up is the sign that you've actually improved, not the sign that you're improving, right? You should be able to think in game, be like, oh, I see that my micro has improved or my macro has improved here, and therefore my rank will go up. Not my rank went up, therefore I improved. It's the opposite way that you need to be thinking. So, what can you actually do to get better? We're going to pull up a little text box here, right? Because I want to talk about a few things, right? The first thing is one, right? Number one, and the most important thing is you have to think. Even before you load into game, you should be thinking about a few things. What champion? What build? What role? Right? Allergies. So, why do these three W's matter, right? Well, first of all, this is the fundamental how you're gonna climb. Well, you have to play somebody who you're playing, right? If you want to play Nautilus, are you gonna play Nautilus jungle? Are you gonna play him support? Are you gonna play him top lane? Where are you going to play Nautilus so that you can get the most effective use of your skill set, right? This is the most important thing. You need to be effective at what you want to do, which is winning. And to be the most effective at winning, you have to pick the correct champion, and then you have to correct build, right? Because if you're playing Nautilus support and you're building Rod of Ages and not building a support item, you're building the wrong item. That's handicapping you in game because your stats are worse. You're making yourself have to work harder to win rather than making yourself work easier to win, right? Because if you have a better build, you have better stats. And if your stats are better than the enemies, you do more damage. You take more HP. You can survive for longer, right? All of these things because you had the correct build, right? You are making it easier for yourself to win. Let's say you're playing Tank Nautilus and you're playing him in the jungle. But instead of building Rod of Ages first, you build Thornmail. Fine item. It's not bad on Nautilus, but it doesn't help you clear the jungle faster, It doesn't help you in team fights super early because you're not getting a lot of effectiveness out of Grievous Wounds. And so what you're doing is you're making yourself have to work harder to win. Make it have to work less to win. And then finally, I've sort of already talked about it again, but what role, right? Certain roles have an easier time impacting the game. Compare, again, say jungle to support. Or, to that matter, mid lane, right? Mid lane is a lot more about wave clearing, the 1v1, wave management, again, similar to top lane, rather than maybe, say, clear speed or macro focus. And so it's like, what role should I play to get the best use out of my skill set? Those are the three things that you need to decide before you even queue up, right? Or when you are queuing up and you're trying to build a team call, what is the most effective thing for you to do? So, let's sort of move on into mentality. Because here's the thing, this game sucks to play, right? You're gonna sit here and, like, on average, you play, let's say you play 100 games, right? 100, okay? And let's say you have a 50% win rate, a big 5-0, right? So, naturally, if your win rate is 50%, you should win 50 and lose 50, right? A 50-50, nice and simple. And again, that is what the true win rate should be, right? If everybody was a bot, everybody should win 50, lose 50, win 50, lose 50, right? That said, that's not true. Things like what side you get matter, things like what champ you pick matter. So what you need to do is you need to take some of these games that should be auto losses, right? These 50-50 games where you should lose 50 games. Make it 60-40. And now you're climbing. So what you need to do is you need to be the difference maker in 10 games. You don't need to hyper carry every game. It helps. It makes it easier. It makes it easier if you're always in control of your destiny. But you don't always need to be in control of your destiny. You've got to make sure that sometimes you're just playing game manager, right? If you get invaded level 1 and suddenly you're down 2k gold, you're not playing to win the game, you're playing to not lose. If you're a mid laner who gets ganked 3 times, maybe it's time to stop playing less aggressive and think, hey, I've been ganked 3 times, I'm down almost 1,000 gold, they've gotten 3 kills on me, the enemy mid laner's really fed. I need to play game management, right? I need to not lose. You don't need to win, you need to not lose. Because you gotta have some faith, the tiniest smidgen of faith in your teammates. Because if you try to make hero plays and you're down 1,000 gold, you're gonna be down more because you can't get kills. You don't have the stats, right? You don't have items. So, we've sort of talked about all of the out of game things, right? We've talked about a lot of my sort of theory about how you think about the game as maybe a vector instead of a direct line of improvement. We've talked about what you should do before, even loading in. So let's talk about macro. Why macro? Why do I choose to talk about macro first? Why not talk about micro? Well, it's very simple. People understand what to improve about micro a lot of the times. They understand, well, how do I improve micro? Well, I get better hands, I get faster fingers, blah, 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 right? But a lot of the times, we'll use this image. This image is better. People don't understand how you improve at macro, right? There seems to be a very lack of understanding, especially in Wild Rift. How do you actually get better at the macro game? So let's start with a few things. First of all, where your lane is, right? I need this to be, let's say red. Red. That's easier. Okay, on God, I'm gonna murder this application. Okay. Come on, red marker. Okay, whatever. It's gonna be weird. Right, so when your lane is top, right? Hopefully you all can see my cursor. It doesn't look like you can. Okay. We'll say when you're top lane, right? I'll just use one line, that way you all can see it better, hopefully. So, when you are top lane, when your lane is right here, right, you have to think about this side of the map, right? That sort of top side of the map is what you have to worry about. When you're bot lane, you have to worry about the other side of the map, right? When you're mid lane, you have to worry about that middle area of the map, right? Let's sort of split it into thirds, right? So if that's 1/3, this is 2/3, that's your last third. Again, the circles aren't necessarily even, but the point should be, think about splitting the map sort of like this, right? There are 3 lanes, and there are like that. I'm going to get rid of all of these real quick, because I want to talk about, we'll make that red again, and then that red. So right, you got your 3 lanes. Well, you also have a lane this way, which is right here. And then you have another lane right here. Right? This is your thoroughfare into the jungle. So you got to think about what sections of the map am I controlling, right? So if the enemy, we'll get rid of these cross lines, decides to invade your red, right? They go in that way. You have lost section control of this area of the map, right? What did they give up for that? Well, the enemy gave up this area of the map, so you could counter invade, or you could try to force them out. That's the sort of simple macro play that's like, the enemy takes space in one spot, so you take space in a different spot. Now, let's sort of get into more advanced macro concepts. For example, the concept of timers. Timers are, well, what are timers, right? They are your minion wave, right? Your minion wave comes out from base. We'll redo that. I want to go here. So your minion wave comes out from base, and then it goes this way, or it goes this way, right? And so you can't just let the minion wave walk, because what the enemy will do is they will kill the minion wave, and they will take your turret. So what does this have to do with timing, right? Well, depending on how quickly you clear waves, you could, hypothetically, again, in an ideal scenario, you will be here, you can recall all the way back to base, and then as the minions get here, you will get there at the same time, right? So basically, you want to meet the minions. Allergies art. You want to be able to meet your timings with the minions. That's what a timer is, right? It is your minion timer. So, how do I know my timers? Well, it's very simple. Where's the wave, right? A general rule of thumb is that the wave is just spawning, you probably have enough time to recall, right? Because you can make it back at the time because you move a lot faster than minions right now. The other thing is, it depends on like what time the game is at, right? Because generally, if you're at around 2 minutes, the support can get a recall off, and then you can go top lane. The other way that you can think about timers is, do I have something that's happening right now? That's a dog line, right? If Rift Herald is starting right now, I have to be there. I don't have time to waste up here. I need to get back to base, out to Rift Herald immediately. So, just think about your timers. The easiest timers to remember are at about 2 minutes and 4 minutes. Around 2 minutes, you can usually get a recall off, which will let you get your first item. Maybe it's later, depending on what role you're playing, right? You usually want to recall to get your first item when it's ADCs, when it's full. You want to get a full first item. For mid laners and top laners, it's usually about half an item. You want to get, like, say for example, you're playing Camille. You want to be able to get your Sheen and your Phage for the Triforce, or the Sheen and the Jarm's Fist for Divine Sunderer. Something like that, which is about half an item. Or if you're playing like the Ziggs bot lane, you want to be able to get that full Luden's Echo and then come out and move to mid lane. If you're a support or a jungler though, your timers are a lot different. For a support, you want to recall it like maybe 2 minutes and then make a play on the map, right? Make a gank top lane, make a gank mid lane in cooperation with your jungler. So that's what you're looking to do. And so that means your first buy is generally going to be either like a boots and a winged moonplate, upgraded boots, the boots health crystal buy. You've got a lot of different buys that you can go. So that is when you've got to pay attention to like, well, what time am I going to have? How much gold am I going to have to spend at base? For junglers, your timers is, are your camps alive, right? You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 camps, plus scuttles. And if these camps are alive, you want to try to clear as many of them as possible. Recall, and then clear as many as possible. You want your camps to be dead for as long as possible and alive for as little as possible. That's the end goal. So, if you were to start Krugs, right, if you were to full clear this direction, generally, when you hit the scuttle, the first camp will be respawning. It'll be about 2 minutes into the game. The first camp will be respawning probably in the next 10 to 15 seconds. Obviously, assuming you full cleared. If you go Scuttle Gromp, I think it's a little bit different for timing. Yeah. So, what you want to do then is, well, let's say I've cleared out my full jungle. I'm up here. I'm the jungler, and I'm right there at the Scuttle, okay? Right here. Do I want to, right? You have two options. You can either A, run back all that distance, or you can recall, come here, and run that distance, right? You can make it faster by buying boots or an item here, and it's still about the same distance, but it's much quicker and more efficient. Efficiency, basically. Okay, so we talked about timers, and what do they mean, what do they do, why do they matter? Right, and so it's important to remember that timers are entirely based on your minions, right? So just depending on how you're doing with minions, that can change what your timers are. It's also known as roam timers in PC League. There are a lot of good videos about like roam timers in PC League. The advice doesn't necessarily transfer for 1-to-1, but I think it's probably a better concept explanation on a lot of those videos that I would recommend. So yeah. So I want to talk about micro, because this is a concept that I hate. I hate how people talk about micro. Because I'm going to find the tweet. I know exactly where it is. But the problem with a lot of how people think about micro is that you all it's not just
Yeah.
micro is I have faster fingers than the other player, right? Micro is also a lot about what I want to sort of exemplify in this right here, which is micro is about prediction. So let's watch Remake right here. Um, Remake's in the bottom right, bottom middle of your screen area. Uh, he's now right here where the scuttle or the vision fruit spawns. So watch what happens. Dot KBG throws down an Aatrox first ability, which looks really weird, right? Why is he throwing it here? Well, he's going to flash onto Remake. But watch what happens before that. Remake flashes, boom, in advance. He predicts that Dot is going to try to flash on him, so he flashes first. I'm going to throw this in slow motion once we get right there. Okay. Right? So even before Dot has flash, Remake is flashing because he understands what the enemy is trying to do and he is predicting. Instead of, right, what some people are going to try to do is they're just going to be like, instead of reacting, you predict. And this is helpful for a lot of people. First of all, right, predicting requires something other than just having a fast reaction time, right? Because a lot of times, if you're maybe older or like you just don't have that fast reaction time in general because of, like some other reason, you can't predict what's going to happen. It's just what it is. Or you can't react to what's going to happen. So instead of doing that, if you predict in advance, you don't need to react. The other thing about predicting is that it is important from game knowledge, right? Macro and micro, when I'm talking about how do I improve on both of them, it's game knowledge, right? It's literally just game knowledge. And this is important because I'm going to talk about it right now, right? How do I improve at the game? Sort of circling back to our original point. As I've talked about all these concepts and all of this stuff that doesn't matter, right? You're like, okay, cool, wave timers, okay, cool, predict. How do I get better at the game? Well, one, you are going. Sorry, I'm trying to find my notes here. Yeah, here we go. You're going to learn, okay? You need to learn about the game. So, how do I learn? Well, you can watch other people, you can watch videos, you can do practice by yourself, right? There's a lot of things that you can do to learn the game. Well, let's say that you've learned about the game. Well, what do? You practice. You go into game and you queue up against some friends or something, or like you hop into a ranked game and you practice those strategies, right? So you learn, you practice, maybe you're practicing jungle clears, and then you implement, right? You take this to the next level and you implement your strategies consistently in game, right? Because maybe when you're practicing, you're doing it once or twice, Maybe when you're practicing, you're trying to predict and you miss some predictions. Implementing is, yeah, I know what he's going to do. He's going to try to flash you. It's a telegraph, right? So you're going to learn, you're going to practice, you're going to implement. And then once you've implemented that strategy, you're going to go back and you're going to learn something new. This is the way to improve. You learn, you practice, and then you implement. That's the important thing. Just as, just in case some people aren't aware, the main point of the video is over. I'm just going to talk about quickly. We're going to talk about point 2 real quick. Practice. Because a lot of people are going to be like, well, okay, you say how to practice, but I have zero clue how to practice, right? It's like, well, what do I do? Because like I know that I can hop into a casual, I can hop into a ranked game, get some reps. How else am I going to practice? Well, I'm going to try to provide something for each role at least. So yeah, let's sort of run through them. First of all, you can just you can do some warm-ups. You can hop into a training game. I like to do the Lee Sin warm-up where you practice uh, you practice using sonic waves and like bouncing around between dummies, or you practice flash kicks, which generally requires a bunch of movement. Like flash one side, kick the other. It's nice, like differential movement. You're getting movement in multiple directions. That's a nice practice routine. The other thing, right, is that if you're a jungler, you can practice your full clears, right? You can be like, well, I'm going to start red, and then I'm going to go to blue. And the goal is to get it in under 130. Obviously, I mean 130 from when you start, not 130 game time. That's different. But basically, what you're doing is you're just practicing your clear. That said about this practice method, it's a bit bad because every time you want to do it, you're gonna have to exit the practice and then leave again and then re-enter because of how the buffs level up now. Um, so that is sort of this method did get nerfed basically, which is just unfortunate. Okay, well, let's say I play top lane or I play bot lane and I want to practice. I don't know. I want to practice. What am I going to do? Well, you can do either some 2v2s. This is a shitty bot lane drawing. I'm going to remake it. You can practice 2v2s, right? Where you queue up against maybe two other people, or you practice 1v1s, right? So basically, here you can practice like maybe first kill or two turret damage, because those are usually good signs of winning lane. The X's are turrets, just as an FYI. Right, so you can practice trying to win the 1v1 or win the 2v2. Also applies to mid lane, obviously, as well. Well, what else can I do that? You can run full games, like I said. You can also, again, if you have friends, maybe you're queuing up with some other people, you can practice executing a specific strategy. For example, let's say that this this is you, big X right here, and you want to practice, you want to practice this strategy where you top dive level 3. Well, you have your other buddy queue up as a jungler, you practice top dive level 3, right? Like, you can do that as well. Basically, the idea here is I'm sort of trying to outline what can you do to practice and improve. Please leave any feedback in the comments. Follow my Twitter as usual.